Okay, I guess we're live. Welcome everyone to the ARPG Roundtable. This is a real star-studded lineup we have for you guys. It is one that you can participate in. We have a code on the screen if you want to submit some questions. That's been the case for a lot of the other roundtables and events, as you know. Hopefully you know how to use it by now. This is a really amazing lineup. We only have about an hour, so I want to apologize ahead of time if I have to cut anyone off. Ideally, we'd want this around 10 hours, but we couldn't really make that happen today. Let's just do a quick round of introductions, but I do want to remind you guys, these are the real juggernauts of the ARPG scene. If you have enjoyed an ARPG game, most likely they have made it, or they have heavily influenced it. So I'm Kripp, and we can go around. Perhaps with David, maybe you want to introduce yourself and talk about either a project you are working on or have enjoyed working on.
Yeah, my name's David Brevik, and I've been making games for 30-something years now, long time. Made all sorts of ARPGs, Diablo, Diablo 2, Marvel Heroes, and we made Hellgate London, and I've consulted on a million other projects and done a bunch of other things. Right now I have about 47 jobs, so I'm doing consulting for a VC, to have my own publishing company, to have my own indie game company, to all sorts of things. So that's me in a nutshell.
There's going to be some repetition because we all started together way back in the day. But yeah, my name's Erich Schaefer, and I've also been making ARPGs from the get-go, the Diablos, Hellgate London, and then we teamed up with Travis to make the Torchlight series. And currently I am making an unannounced game as a VP of games at Zynga, and it will not be a mobile game. So. Well, it'll be mobile and cross-platform.
I'm Erich Schaefer, Max's brother. I made, with these guys and these guys, Diablo 1, Diablo 2, Hellgate London, Torchlight 1, Torchlight 2, Rebel Galaxy, and Rebel Galaxy Outlaw. I think those are the highlights of my career. Retired for a little bit, but then I'm dragged back in. I've got a new indie studio called Moonbeast. You guys can look it up, moonbeast.com, though we have nothing interesting to say yet, so. Just had to get a little pitch out there. Sorry, Chris.
I'm Travis Baldree. The first ARPG I made was Fate, which people tell me they played on their parents' laptops, and then I feel really old. After that, I went to work with everyone here when they were at Flagship, and I was the lead on a little project called Mythos, which was another action RPG, which is now disappeared into the ether. And then afterward, when we started Runic, we made Torchlight 1 and 2. Eric and I then moved on to make the Rebel Galaxy games, as he mentioned. And now I've effectively retired from games, and I narrate audiobooks and write novels, because I guess I'm just a flip-flopper.
Hi, I'm Chris Wilson from Grinding Gear Games. My first game was Path of Exile, and I'd like to say my 41st game was a Path of Exile expansion by now. But yeah, it's been entirely that franchise for my entire career.
I'm Erik Olofsson. I used to work for 15 years on this little game called Path of Exile. And a year and a half I ventured out on my own to make a physical card game called Sorcery Contested Round. So, new, very small studio there.
All right, thank you very much. We're going to kick it off with some questions here. I want you guys to feel free to maybe add in or, develop a conversation. I'm sure everyone will love to hear your different perspectives on things. So the first question that I thought was really interesting from the audience here: how do you feel about the current trend of having every attack be telegraphed by red marks on the ground? Oh, Max,
we were just fighting over this the other week.
Exactly. We've been fighting about this. I don't like it. I'd like to have the tell be the animation and the action and not some large piece of geometry on the ground. Sometimes you have to do it, and it should be subtle. I don't generally like it, though. I think it's a bad trend.
What do you think, David?
I disagree because I'm a systems person, but I kind of understand it. So we've, I think that I think that making it a little bit less visible is acceptable.
We've literally had this argument in the last month repeatedly.
I've never used it myself, but it's a valid tool. I like it in some games.
I like the intuitive feeling of distances and feeling like I've gotten a handle on things and having that innate knowledge without a helper, if I can get it.
Yeah, we've tried really hard on Path of Exile to have things be visible on the screen as a real scene. Like, we don't do damage numbers and that kind of stuff because we want you to actually feel the visceralness of combat. And telegraphing is a lot like that, where while I don't work on fights that have telegraphed the text myself because I do items and stuff, my understanding is the team will telegraph through animation before they telegraph through effects where possible.
Yep.
I would say that it's best to avoid it as much as possible and as long as possible. And there's a way to teach the players about dangerous attacks coming. So say in a level you can have small monsters do an attack that's similar compared to the boss attack that is. So you can kind of teach the player earlier about it, and that's kind of the good way of doing it. But it's also a very slow way that requires a lot of planning. So it is kind of understandable that you would use the red mark sometimes.
And don't do red is kind of my thing. Like, you can see things that are telegraphed, and it could be a subtle, in-universe color. Yeah.
Now, everyone here has a lot of experience with the ARPGs in general. A lot of the questions we're getting have to do with what started it. Why is it that you have all tried to perfect the ARPG genre in your own different ways? How did it start?
Started from playing a lot of games. Oh boy, this is really good.
How much time do we have?
Maybe it was high school, early college, I started playing a game called Rogue, where the term roguelike comes from. And then moved on to some other versions. People made similar kind of games. Moria, Umoria, Angband, NetHack, things like that, which were ASCII games where you were like the @ symbol attacking the letter K. And they had random levels and random items and stuff like that, and you leveled up in it. I played that to death. And then so when we got together and we made our own studio, then we want to kind of take that gameplay that I had played for so long and kind of update it, make it a real, put graphics on it, make it kind of pop. And so but still keep a lot of the core, which was the random levels and the random items and all the different monsters that can show up and stuff like that. And so that's really, I think, where it mainly comes from.
Yeah, and I think for some of us, we were kids playing Dungeons and Dragons with, some level of ADHD where we just wanted to get to the killing, And at the time, our computer RPGs tended to be kind of story heavy and stat heavy, and you'd roll your characters, and it would be an hour before you got to kill your first skeleton. And we thought, we should be killing a skeleton within a minute or two, And so that was kind of one of our goals too, is just get to the action. There's plenty of time for storytelling, but you don't have to front load it so much. And then I think, Eric, you can talk about how we got the camera angle and the way we look at an ARPG.
I'm going to skip that. I don't have to listen to my brother's question.
This is what I live with.
For me, why I just keep making the same game in a sense is, for me, when we killed our first skeleton and the first shield or whatever popped out, all I can ever do is just iterate on that. I just think, okay, let's kill the next monster, let's get the next piece of loot, and my mind is just kind of hardwired to constantly follow that pattern, and I just find it enjoyable to do and enjoyable to play. So that's my ARPG story.
I think my first, as close to an ARPG as I could get, apart from NetHack, was Telengard on the C64. Avalon Hill put it out, and it had an infinite, randomly generated, deterministic dungeon. So it was the same every single time, but it went on forever. And this was running on a real piece of crap. And I was just kind of amazed by it. And it also just had a very weird sense of humor. Like you would come across an elf and it would say, the elf likes your body and gives you a sword +1. It was, I still have incredibly fond memories of this game. I remade this game, I liked it so much. And then later on, when I encountered Diablo 1, I was hooked.
Yep, it started with Diablo, and thank you guys, by the way, for that. Seriously. Yeah, that needs applause. I played Diablo 1 obsessively until Diablo 2 was announced, and then I remember getting in trouble at high school for watching Diablo 2 trailers on the school computers where I wasn't supposed to be at lunchtime, and I tried to get the teacher who was throwing me out interested in it, but no, he wanted me to get out of there. And so, yeah, when Diablo 2 was released, I played it obsessively for a very long time. My friends will understand the degree of that obsession, and I took the game apart to learn exactly how it works, and approached Eric, who I met playing it, and Jonathan, who I knew from school, and said, we need to make a game like this. It's perfect, and there's no sequel on the horizon, and there's millions and millions of players out there who want something just like this, and let's try to understand its essence as best we can, and do our best service to the genre, and try to make some kind of spiritual successor. So it all started with your product.
Oh. And thank you, by the way, for taking up the mantle so we can go on to other things.
Yeah, I think Eric said most of it. It's just something special about clicking a monster, an item pops out, and you equip that, so you can click a slightly harder monster, and then everything sort of just goes from there. And there's something with the UI as well, where you just have the top-down camera, and everything is kind of simple and viewable, and just cut straight to the addiction, I guess.
Well, once the monsters die and they drop their shields, the next step becomes, well, maybe trading it. We have a few questions about that, and I kind of wanted to tie in what I was still thinking. What do you guys think about gold and or trading in ARPGs?
Well, I like trading. I think Chris and I have little different views on this. We've talked about this quite a bit. I think that the easier it is to trade the item, the more you need something that restricts trading. So you can make that some sort of binding system, or the item can only be traded a few times, or whatever system you want. But the easier you make that, then the game loses a little bit about what it's about. So if you can get everything by just trading, then you lose kind of the point of the moment-to-moment combat. So it's important to have trading, I think, but if you make trading difficult, then it doesn't happen as often, and kind of is reserved for the players that are already really deeply into the game and can then use that trading, and they're getting enjoyment out of it in many other ways. So I think that I like trading, but you have to be really careful with it because it is kind of the opposite of the whole point of playing the game. Yep. As for gold, I think gold is important, but oftentimes people don't find uses for gold. So as long as you keep gold as an active resource that you can use, I think that I like picking it up.
Yeah. Now my feeling on trading is that these are co-op games for the most part, and you're there with your friends playing, and you should pretty much be able to trade unbridled with them. But when you have a huge community of hundreds of thousands or millions of gamers even, and you have some sort of global marketplace for it, you get item gluts, and it devalues it, and you lose the experience, like you're saying, of the accomplishment of killing bosses and stuff. So yeah, with your friends, trade away. But once you have like an auction house, say, it can degenerate.
Yeah, I like collectability is a lot of fun. That's part of the loot game, and I love loot. So I think the collectability is enhanced by trading. It's not that cool just to have your own stuff. You want to be able to send it back and forth. But I think that a lot of people would agree like the Diablo 3 auction house sort of destroyed half the fun of the game when it becomes that's your way to get to your loot. That's not the fun way to get to loot. The fun way to get to loot is through the random rolls out there in the field. But, so, I'm mixed on it.
I don't know if anybody will like my answer. I really don't like trading at all. I like action RPGs as just part of the joy of the randomization is just dealing with whatever the hell you were dealt.
Yep.
You know, what are the monsters, what is the layout, and what's the items that I get, and then just making the best of it. I love that sort of like, that essential essence to it. As far as gold goes, even if it's not relevant, I just like the ongoing dopamine hit of picking up gold. It's like Pac-Man eating pellets in the maze. I don't know, I just like it. It's like clearing the fog of war too.
Yeah.
It speaks to me at a deep level.
Yeah, picking up money, you would never get sick of picking up money.
I'm never tired of picking up money.
Well, you know our views on trading, of course. You've read the manifesto, and you've heard all of the explanation for why we're experimenting with gold and Path of Exile too. But I'll touch on a subject here where we deeply feel that trade is critical from the point of view of being able to have an item where you say, this is mine, and it's valuable, and you want it, and I could give it to you, but I'm not going to, because I could absolutely hand it over, but it's mine, and you have to give me something of value. We want that feeling of the thing you've got could be tradable. And to touch on what Travis said, there is something special about playing a game on your own merit, the solo self-found approach, and that's why, and I personally prefer playing solo self-found than playing with trade, but I would never make Path of Exile an entirely solo self-found game. And that's why the way we structured it is if you opt into solo self-found mode, you can opt out yourself or some of your items. So you can play and see how far you can get by yourself, and then when you find a mirror, you're like, time to trade, and then cut out your whole character. So we've got that compromise there where you can play without trade, but the game does have trade.
Yeah, I'll just add a small thematic point about gold, where it's obviously good to have gold in the game because everyone knows what gold means. Like, it's something you want more of, and there's like all this history and everything attached to it. So it's perfect like that. You just need to make sure it's actually a little hard to get and you don't get too much of it.
So a big part of trading just happens to get the high quality loot. And one of the questions we have has to do with how do you balance quantity versus quality, where they point out that both extremes seem pretty poor, but how do you land in the middle, and where should you?
I think that for me, if quantity at some level becomes useless, like meaningless. And so if you have a lot of quantity, you're going to end up in a situation where you're just like leaving things on the ground all the time, and you start to, lose hope. Because as the things drop and it's yet another, whatever low level, just green or white or whatever your kind of lowest tiers are, it's just like, okay, that's not really helping me anymore. And then, and then you're just praying for that orange. I would rather get something where it's like dropping less often and having higher quality. Dropping less items and having higher quality ones show up every now and then than the other way around. Just a litter of items are meaningless. So there is a delicate balance there, because you also have to assume that people, especially at the beginning, that they don't have a lot of items and stuff like that. So, and then there may be systems that make it so that those items, the white ones or the green ones or the low level ones, that there's ways to craft them up or do things with them. And then they start to have some value. So it all depends on your systems and how it works. But overall, I prefer to keep the kind of item stuff down, even though that's opposite of what I did in Marvel Heroes, which was loot pinatas.
Or Diablo 2.
Yeah, which is like all sorts of showers of items. But yeah, that was so I think that keeping it down is kind of more my modern thinking.
I kind of disagree. I kind of
nice.
I think it's really tricky. It's a delicate balance. There can be too much stuff, but we tried at times toning down in Diablo 2 even. Let's stop dropping the whites and the grays and stuff. Yeah. Or even, toning it back might be appropriate. But when you don't drop them at all, and all you're dropping is the greens or the blues or the yellows. Yeah. It doesn't really make any sense. Why not then make them just all one color?
Yeah, make the white ones better.
Yeah, just make the white ones better if you're not going to have the different tiers. And so it kind of, the higher tiers lose their meaning if you're not dropping the lower tiers. I think with Torchlight, I did some pretty good work of making the mid-level magic stuff still appropriate. I kind of hope, I'm still working on it and I don't have a plan yet, but I'm hoping that we can make the low-level stuff still relevant as more than just trash items for sale or for breaking down. But I don't know. It's just, I think it's just tricky and you just got to kind of play with it in the game to see where you find a good balance.
It's hard to give a precise answer on it because it's really, really very feel-based. You just actually have to play the game and feel how it feels. Do things feel relevant or not? Do I have enough garbage so that there's proper contrast with the interesting stuff? Otherwise, I don't know, it's so feel-based.
Yeah, because if you make it like some mechanic where you take all the white items and get a crafting resource out of them by breaking them down, it can become kind of a chore then. Like, it's like, oh God, I got to
pets.
Huh? But yeah, like I agree with you though. It's individual per game, and you just got to go with what feels good. And there's no perfect answer. I feel like we have a tradition now of leaving the white items on the ground after a little while. So sure. Yeah.
There's an aspect of Diablo 2's itemization that I had missed when we initially did Path of Exile. And this is partly because we were trying to streamline things that we felt were unnecessary, which in almost all cases was a mistake. And it's related to when you actually look at the items that drop. Okay, for a start, a bunch of what you get on the ground is gold, right? We thought unnecessary, don't need that. And then you got potions, and we thought, aha, don't need those either. We've got flask charges, so that's all that gone as well. But they've also got ammo, like bolts and arrows. And we said, nah, just unlimited ammo. Who wants to go and buy more of these, right? So far we've eliminated like 40% of actual item drops by accident. Then you've got other stuff. Like you've got fulminating gas potions and exploding things and things you can throw and random spears and stuff that have quantity on them. And there's all this stuff, like literally exploding potions, which you're never seriously going to use, but they do represent some non-zero percentage of drops. And then you've got gems, for example, which are relatively common and get consumed in the hierarchy of stuff there. And you get to the point where when you include gold drops and stuff, like 60% of the items that hit the ground are not ones that you would actually classify as equipment. And we'd literally got rid of all of that. And so that means in order for Path of Exile to then feel like you're actually finding stuff in the regular non-ruthless mode, it kind of has to all be equipment. And I wish we had realized this from the start, because now we're facing the problem where players are trained that unless the screen is full of, an armory dropped on the ground for every group of monsters, that it's not enough items. So this isn't on the quantity versus quality spectrum. You kind of know our views on that, but it is an observation where I wish we had paid more attention to that rather than saying, we can do better.
Yeah, it's a tricky conundrum that in the beginning of the game, you want to have very simple items that obviously become trash later on, but there's also part of the player progression to say that, okay, well, my character is a lot better now, and I don't care about these bad items. Like that's a sign that you became better. So that's something that you want to keep. But then, of course, when you play the same game for 8 years, then you might not care about that initial sort of character development part of the first few hours. So then you have to introduce complicated solutions to solve that.
I guess it never bugged me to leave a bunch of stuff there, so I was probably responsible for the fields of junk more than almost anybody. I remember Blizzard South guys at the time, Alan Adam in particular, who was the head up down there, was like, he has to physically bring every item back to town and sell it for for whatever he can get. And so he was always like pretty pissed at me. I was like, we gotta drop less stuff. It's just no fun to just walk out of town and walk right back in and sell the junk. And so it was a philosophical problem. I kind of figure it worked out in the long run, so I don't worry too much about it.
But it's all interrelated with other systems like the size of your inventory and stuff.
Yeah, it's a tough little mix there. Systems.
Yeah, that's certainly a difficult one to balance. We have a question, a different kind of balance. How do you find a balance between action and storytelling? And perhaps we can start with Travis, and you can inspire some thoughts in what at least I think, because I just skip all the dialogue. So
I'm a dialogue skipper, and on the development, Fate had, the story was 1 page of text, which I got somebody to read. And then in Torchlight and Torchlight 2, I was always like, man, we got to cut this dialogue down. You guys in your lore, just set it to the side. I just want to be beating the crap out of things. Now I write books, and I don't really know how to reconcile those two things because it doesn't make any sense at all. But I was always very much that you can't require me to read the lore to play. And I talked to some designers who also did tabletop. And they're always trying to make you read like the micro fiction in order to consume the data that you're trying to get out of the rule book. And there's always that pushback, like, I don't want to read the micro fiction, just tell me what the number is. And that's where I fall on the spectrum.
Yeah, it's funny. I remember we cut down our dialogues in the Diablos, and eventually at one point we were like, just bold the important words.
Make them yellow text. I was notorious for yellow text. Everybody always gave me crap about yellow text because I just wanted to highlight all the important nouns so you could ignore everything that the writer had written.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I'm a dialogue skipper, except for the passages in Diablo 1, like the Sin War, where like you just have to like listen to it and that epic voice acting. It was so good. Was that Bill Rover? I can't remember.
Yeah, Roper did some. I suspect it was mostly the Blizzard film department guys coming up with the actual that. But I think it was very sparing in Diablo 1. We never hit you over the head. There was just a few incidents of it, so that was what made it bearable.
And it was nice. It was a break. The cinematics were a break from the action and gives you a sense of progressing on to the next thing. So I like those. I just don't like it while I'm playing. I don't want to get up to a boss and have him start into a long monologue, before I have to kill him. Just let me kill him. Yeah.
But just development-wise, too, we made the Diablos and the Torchlights with almost no story at all. The story was kind of added in later. So the world building, the lore, that was deliberate, kind of the back stuff. But the story and the text were really not part of the development at all. So I often don't know what the hell's going on in my own games. People ask me questions, and I'm like,
it's all about the vibes. It's about the vibes.
Yeah, vibes, not text. How about it?
I'm interested in Eric's perspective here.
Well, when it comes to dialogue specifically, we actually discussed this a little bit backstage early on, so I guess it's important to all of us here. But it's more is not necessarily better, and it's a lot about condensing it down because everyone wants to get back to clicking the monsters to see what pops out of them. So it's kind of about trying to get as much as possible into something as short as possible, and then even working with things like the tone of voice of the NPC and like what type of greeting words they make, and try to get as much as possible out of those small things.
And to some extent, you're the story. Your path through it and the things you do and the items you find and the build you make, that's the story,
Yeah, you don't want to write it too much for the player.
Right.
So it should be in their head.
We have over time cultivated an audience of players that want as much deep depth and stuff to discover in the dialogue, and will play to seek out the Easter eggs and find it. And we make sure that in addition to making sure the dialogue is as skippable as possible for like 70% of players, we have lots of stuff for the other 30%. And so we try to give our dialogue team the resources they need.
And you can do storytelling with the environment that you're passing through and the things that you see and stuff. It doesn't have to be a dialogue that plays out really slowly when you're trying to get back to clicking. I played some Diablo 4 and said, I'm going to just watch all of this cinematics and listen to all the dialogue just to see what kind of storytelling they do. And again, I really enjoyed playing it, but I was about 10 minutes before I was just escaping through the...
I used to always think about adding a sum it up for me button when people were doing dialogue, and then they would just interrupt and say, okay, let me just sum this up. And then I would get the digest in character. It's perfect.
Well, maybe we'll kind of transition here with an answer of my own. One of my favorite parts of dialogue is when the boss is talking to me. I think my favorite bit of dialogue is the first time I opened the seals in Diablo 2 and Chaos Sanctuary, and Diablo tells me that not even death will save you from me. That's the dialogue I like.
Yeah.
And with that in mind,
quick and to the point, though. You know?
yeah. With that in mind, why don't we just go around and you guys can maybe talk about your favorite boss in any ARPG with the consideration of dialogue as well.
I'll give a quick start here, because it kind of inspired my own thing, inspired myself, and that was the butcher in Diablo 1.
Damn it.
It just, I wanted to get
What everybody was going to say.
I'm grabbing it. But and again, the real short dialogue, just the fresh meat, he says, or something. He's coming after you.
That was great storytelling.
That was good storytelling. But you know, it set a tone. It set a tone of scariness that bad things are going to happen here. So that it inspired me to because there was no such thing as an ARPG boss. He was sort of the first ARPG boss, I guess. So got to develop bosses from there. I almost think we almost never hit the high of that.
No, you can't. You can never
Honestly.
remake a butcher encounter that had the same emotional impact, and we have tried many times, and it's just hopeless.
We tried really hard in Path of Exile, of course, to do it with Brutus. But.
Right. Well, it's funny too, though, is because now you almost can't really do a boss that kills you that bad that early in a game anymore, because there's people there'd be an outcry against it. I think we luckily got him in before people had expectations.
Challenge accepted.
I remember just recently I went, God, it wasn't recently now. How long ago did I give that 20th anniversary Diablo speech? That was at GDC. Whenever that was, I got the CD, we had a CD demo of Diablo 1 that we sent out that was like part of PC Gamer magazine or something like that. And I got the demo running, which is not a very easy thing to do anymore because it was so old and stuff. But I had it's randomly generated, so like I go down the steps, and the very first room I encountered was the butcher. I opened up the door, he came out, whack, whack, I was dead. I was like, oh my God, is this somebody's first experience playing an ARPG? They walk down the steps and open the door, and there's the butcher.
I'm going to take a different approach, a boss that's not good for its storytelling or immersion necessarily, but I'm going to pick Pendleskin because it's like an level 86 treasure class. It's like 40-second run cycle from town, so anyway.
All right, I'm going to bring up Telengard again because it was in the early days, they really did not have like level bands set up for the creatures that could show up in the dungeon. So you could start Telengard, walk 1 square away from the entryway, and a level 30 dragon could appear and breathe fire on you. And that was and you immediately died. And there is no save, you just restart, you re-roll, and that's it. And that's your first experience playing the game, is dying on the very first move. And that reminded me somewhat of the Butcher.
Out-butchered the butcher.
Well, when it comes to boss and getting their loot, an interesting part of it is the magic find attribute that's showed up, I would say, quite successfully in most of the games that you have made. What is your take on magic find as a stat or an attribute in an ARPG?
I loved it just as a bit of a counterbalance, kind of I'm going to take the magic find, but it's a trade-off from important stats and other things. It was simpler back when I was playing with that in the Diablo 2 days. I know you guys working with that, do all kinds. I don't know. That's all I have to say, I guess.
Yeah, 100%, that's how I feel.
Yeah, I mean, it's an affix usually, so it comes at the expense of something else. So it's a trade-off.
I mean, it seems it's great for late game play when you've kind of done the game a bunch of times, and hey, let me take it. It's a little more of a challenge, but a little better loot seems to be a great thing for people to keep playing the game forever.
Yeah. When you're down to hunting items in a game, it really feels like a fun one to get.
Yeah, I just really liked Magic Find back in the Diablo 2 days because you made a trade-off between absolute killing speed and sort of toughness with Magic Find, and then with the goal, of course, being to get as much wealth as possible at the speediest speed.
One of the things I liked about it too is you really just have to take it on faith, because I don't know how many people are writing down their drops and seeing, did I really get a 3% increase in magic find?
How well is this really working?
Absolutely, I made a database for Diablo 2 to make sure that it was working. Those diminishing returns calculations, which are well documented, formed the basis of Path of Exile's diminishing returns calculations for Magic Find. And they are important because your absolute character power has many axes before they diminish, whereas Magic Find diminishes with just one value. So you do have to make sure you manage the math with that, and there are trade-offs.
Right.
All right. A different angle on this one. So what is the smallest addition or change that you have made to a game that gave you the most amount of joy? Maybe you can start this one, David.
Jeez. Changing Diablo from turn-based to real-time.
That was a good idea. So I have a good example of that. It was in the Diablo 2 Lord of Destruction expansion. Like at the very last moment, we said, hey, you know what would be cool? Throw a couple of, we had hirelings, but just throw a couple soldiers out there fighting the monsters before you get out there. And it just felt so cool to go out and see, like, hey, I'm not alone out here fighting. You know, because a lot of times, like, what is everyone else doing? You know? And like, you know, finally it was a sense, okay, there actually are some other people out here helping out the cause. You know?
Right. They still don't give you a break in the store, though. Yeah, you're saving us, but I'm going to charge you for this weapon.
I don't think it's not that little a change, but I think Dave's brother Pete back in the day suggested the socketable item.
Yeah.
Let's put a gem into an item. And that kind of, you know, that expanded things in a big way. I mean, went a lot of systems on top of that, but I think that was the first great little brainstorm.
Right.
For me, it's probably a toss-up between letting you send your pack animal back to town to sell all your shit and adding a fishing mini game.
I was going to joke fishing as well, but in Fate, that was not actually a joke. There is a mature fishing game that's actually very cool. My smallest change that I think we made that brought me personally the most joy was the hardcore death notifications in global chat. And the story behind that is a user during the closed beta said, hello, I will purchase the $250 gold supporter pack if you add this feature. And we were desperate enough for money that I said to Jonathan, hello, how many hours will it take for you to get this deployed? Like, is it plus EV? And he said, absolutely, it's 10 minutes. And so we made $250 for 10 minutes work.
Nice.
The one change that popped up into my head I'm not really sure why really, but this was super early on in Path of Exile, where we discovered that the ratio between rare items and magic items was completely off, way different than in the Diablo games. And then we fixed it, and then it just felt so much better playing afterwards.
That's awesome, thank you. How do you feel about community tools? Should the game be moddable, or should the game just give you everything you need? And I think I would maybe add on to that, at least hopefully some website guide support into the mix.
I like being able to create mods. I think that builds a stronger game and long-term commitment to a community and to the game. But it's pretty difficult in a game that is kind of a live game. They've done it in World of Warcraft, and there are other games that have examples of this. Hopefully, the game does deliver all that you need, but sometimes it doesn't, and so it's nice when the community can do something like that. It's just kind of, you have to be real careful about what you expose through those tools and what information they can garner, because you're going to end up in a situation where people get big advantages from using particular mods and stuff, and then you kind of get, I don't know, a community that can have some toxicity with, hey, you aren't using this mod, then you're not elite, and all of these kind of things. So there's definitely a balance you have to reach.
I mean, the big balance is between secure items and characters, and mods make that pretty hard. I mean, there's a limited amount of mods that don't ruin your the security of the items and characters.
Yeah, it's sort of inversely proportional to how important it is that everyone's on a level playing field.
Yeah. So I like mods, and the current game I'm making is very moddable, but that's kind of almost experimentally super moddable. So right now I'm leaning into it, but I can see it both ways.
But purely selfishly, I love modability because I spent so much time tearing apart other games and using other mod kits and seeing how things worked, and that was just like a real source of joy for me. So when we made Torchlight and Torchlight 2, we released all the mod tools, and it was definitely complicated for Torchlight 2, and it's nowhere near the complexity, and it doesn't have to deal with the issues that you're bringing up about long-term balance on a game that's a live service. Torchlight 2 was multiplayer, but it was just peer-to-peer, and we knew going in that that was just going to be one of the limitations. And, but again, purely selfishly, I love to tear things apart.
I love the idea of moddable action RPGs. Like, I would love to make a single-player, very moddable one. I don't know if the business proposition is as easy as the live service one. We have to deal daily with customers that are upset because they lost their items due to various things involving third-party programs, right? Like, if the modding ecosystem for online games means that to have the best gameplay experience, you've got to install stuff, which could potentially steal your credentials, and people fork these and insert bad software, and it's really sad when we have to tell users, we're really sorry, we can't do anything, that was your fault for installing the virus. And so we would rather that the modding ecosystem didn't involve people pasting their PHP session IDs into arbitrary websites or downloading executables they run on their work computers and stuff, but you know, gamers want every advantage they can get.
I'm a huge fan of modding, as most game developers probably are. And one point here is that when we got a job application at GGG, and they have, like, you look at modding experience before, like, academic credentials, basically. So get into modding, I guess, if you want to get into the games industry.
That's probably great advice. How do you deal with every character being the one true hero in a multiplayer scenario?
You don't.
Yes. Suspension of disbelief.
Kind of an example of that, not exactly, but we ran into an issue in the end of Diablo 1, you jam this gem into your head, right? And you're...
Spoiler alert.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Best moment in gaming.
And it's a long story, I won't get into it, but that was sort of thrust upon us by the Blizzard film department in the day, who sent us the movie of that's how your game ends. And we didn't really have enough time to change it. And we grew to love it, actually, but at first we were kind of shocked. Wait, that's not... But in any case, what I was getting to is, when we were started Diablo 2, for some reason, the Blizzard South guys thought that everybody should start the game with a gem in their head, like we were continuing from Diablo 1. So that's like, it doesn't even make any sense. Like, everybody you run across was the guy that killed Diablo, so that's exactly the kind of problem you're bringing up. So like Dave says, we just ignored it and just moved on.
Yeah, there's only one universe, and that's the one that you're playing. Right?
That Soulstone moment, though, at the end of Diablo 1 was the point when I realized that media can have a twist at the end. Like, it was impactful.
Oh, yeah. We loved it in the end.
Yeah.
All right. If you had to play one game for your entire life, what would it be? And to specify, you can mention a specific league or patch cycle in it.
I mean, for me, it's not an ARPG at all. I play Civ 6 just relentlessly. So I'm happy with it as is. I would just go with that for the rest of my life, and I'd be okay.
For me, it would be Minecraft. Honestly, I just make myself a nice little castle and look at the sunset.
I actually think Minecraft is a Diablo game. We've got random areas, we've got random items, we've got pretty good combat, we have relatively secure server-side stuff within a community. I mean, what really is it missing, right? And it's moddable and, you know, possibly the best game ever.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Max stole my answer.
Sorry.
No, I can't say Minecraft.
It's ridiculously hard.
We can all say Minecraft.
Okay, let's go start a Minecraft server.
Who's in? That or Words with Friends. I can play Scrabble forever.
Robotron, that's my answer.
Robotron?
Robotron,
All
yes.
right. Nice.
Interesting.
Yeah, I would probably play Diablo 2. I wonder if it's 1.11 or something before Whirlwind got nerfed.
Oh. Ice Blink Whirlwind with a lance.
Ah, yes. Exactly. You know the build. Yeah.
I do. So one of the game genres that has been coming up, it's kind of the Survivor series. We've got a lot of questions from you guys about your thoughts on Vampire Survivor genre. There's a number of games. I don't know which one really defines it, but these games have similar elements to an ARPG,
Yeah.
but they're not quite exactly like it. What do you think?
David made a blend between Diablo and
a survival game, yeah. I made a game called It Lurks Below. It's on Steam. It's fun. Made it by myself. But I think that Vampire Survivors, though, is like, you know, all the things are coming at you from all over, and you level up your character really quickly. And so I do really like that game a lot. I played quite a few hours of it. And it does share a lot of things, but it reminds me more almost of like a card game, because when you know, in a card battler, when you defeat a monster, it's like, hey, here's your choice of, well, it reminds me a little of the card game we're playing here at the show, where here's your 2 choices, your 3 choices of things that you can do that one thing. And so it's a little bit different than the ARPG kind of Diablo-style ARPG, where you're killing stuff and picking up loot and making choices like that. It's just too fast, oftentimes, in the Vampire Survivor. So there's some differences. I'm sure that somebody's going to try and combine them in a more meaningful way, but I do really enjoy that genre, and I had a lot of fun playing.
I've never played it, but I got addicted to watching Asmongold play both Vampire Survivors and Halls of Torment, to the point where I will, before going to work, refresh his channel, hoping there is another video in either game. And it could be the reason why I'm half an hour late to work that day, because I'll watch it on 2 times speed. It's addictive.
A lot of my gaming experience these days is through streamers. The same thing.
All right, we have an awesome question here. How does playing your own game feel when compared to games you had no hand in? And we can mention anything. I mean, maybe Eric, you want to start with even your card game?
How it is to play other games? As a game developer, you unfortunately get a bit destroyed, where you start to look at how they implemented things, and you never quite get that sort of naive thing where, like, when you grew up and played games and you got the kind of super strong experience, but it's more of a sort of scientific effort almost when you play other games now, unfortunately.
Do you get that feeling?
How does it feel to play your own as a
my
contrast?
own game? Well, then it's just that tuned to 11, because you start to look at what things you can improve, and
Right.
it just.
That's my thing. I can't, when I play my own games, it's all looking at the flaws, finding bugs, and and I can relax when it's someone else's game, and I can be a lot more forgiving. I don't care if there's a little flaw in it, if it's someone else did it. But yeah, it makes it hard to enjoy games that we've made.
Yeah, I don't like any of the games I've made.
Oh, come on. You're being too hard on yourself.
No, I'm dead serious. I can't even play a lot of the games that I made anymore. It's very rare that I can. But so oftentimes I'm just too critical. And like, as soon as I'm done playing it, I often go, okay, here's my list of 7 things I gotta fix or whatever, rather than really, just doing it just for fun.
Yeah, there's that reflexive list creation. When I play other games, I still start to do it immediately, and then I have to stop myself. It's like, okay, I got to do this, I got to do this, oh wait, no, this isn't my game. I don't have to do anything. This is great.
Well, I'm going to circle back to a few more game mechanics, because I have a question here I didn't want to miss. Aside from killing monsters, what is your favorite way to award a player power in a game?
I mean, you got to look like a badass after you've leveled up a long way, you know? And so, like, figuring out costumes that are unique and interesting and make you look more powerful is you know, I remember times playing Diablo 2 and finding a cool helmet with horns coming out, and, you know, it made me look so different, and it was almost as fun as actually finishing a level or killing a boss, as, you know, getting a cool looking helmet.
New skills or skill evolutions that are tactily more satisfying than what you had before. Does just immediately the act of doing what you've already been doing just feels better?
I think there's something cool about having meaningful rewards for side quests, because when you're playing through the game, a power gamer wants to ignore the side quests and come back where relevant. But having the distraction of, if I go and actually, like, you know, smash the Soulstone in the Hellforge, I'm going to get a pile of gems that could be useful, and have to do that math as to whether you want to do that is really cool. And I believe the Path of Exile 2 team have been working hard on having quite a lot of significant attribute bonuses on side quests, rather than some skill refund points or something you're not going to need necessarily.
All right, well, our time is just about running out, but I wanted to wrap up with maybe a question you might think about, or maybe whimsically perhaps. Why don't you guys come up together and make the ultimate game?
It's a hell of a group. I think we could do it if the personalities didn't clash too much.
Yeah, this is my brother. It's very hard to work with a sibling. But yeah, no, I mean,
I'm in.
We've collaborated so much over the years in terms of sharing stuff, and we got David on as an advisor for helping us with our Chinese launch and so on, and we are sharing ideas and showing each other what we're working on, regardless of whether it's for the same company or not. So our DNA is spread across all the games we've worked on.
Yeah.
It happens automatically anyway. Yeah.
And you get more games if we spread out a little bit. You know, I mean, if we did that, it would be like one
Quality,
game.
though. Well, thank you all so much for this awesome ARPG roundtable.
Thank you.
Round of applause, guys.
Yeah.
Thank you.